The film started by introducing Isi or Isabel and Ossie or Oscar. Isi was born into a rich family. To make sure of her bright future, her parents became too overprotective of her. Since she was just a kid, her parents never let her decide what she wanted. Everything was always determined by her parents. She lived in a big house, but she never felt happy. She had no friends and her parents rarely spent time with her. Her loneliness made her closer to the chefs in her house, the ones whom she spent time with. Since then, she had a hobby of cooking. Isi was not good at academics. She often got low marks and her parents thought that it was because she spent too much time playing with the chefs. They ended up firing all the chefs in the house. Isi was sad because they were the only friends she had. Moved to the next scene was a boy named Ossie or Oscar. His life was the complete opposite of Isi's life. He lived in the slums with his mother and grandfather. One day, his grandfather was caught robbing and had to be imprisoned. His school was also very different from Isi's. The school was full of delinquents. Ossie decided to practice boxing during his school life with his coach. A few years later, Isi finally finished her study in high school and tried to enter the university. The problem was she didn't pass and failed to enter. She never intended to enter the university because what she wanted was to enter the Chef's Academy in New York. One day, Isi received a call informing her that she was actually passed for university. It turned out that her parents sued the university so she could enter there. Finding out that fact was shocking for her. She was angry and sad because her parent always interfered with her affairs. They didn't hesitate to do anything and sacrifice others' rights for their own sake. That night, she told her parents that she didn't want to study at the university but instead to continue her study at the Chef's Academy. Her parents forbade her and told her they would never pay for her study there. They only wanted her to attend the university. Somewhere else, Ossie had grown into a very talented boxer and was told that he was eligible to enter the professional league if he could in his next fight against a boxer named Jan Izukovic. Unfortunately, he had to pay for the battle for 8,000 euros. And to make things worse, he also found out that his mother had a debt of 14,000 euros. One day, while driving with her friend, Isi had a crazy idea to apply for a job in a small restaurant to embarrass her parents so that they would give her money to continue her study in New York. She then went straight to the restaurant to apply for a waitress there. It turned out that Ossie was there hanging out with his friends. Ossie said that he had to get some money so that he could enter the boxing match against Jan Izukovic. He said that so he could fix his family's financial problem. He didn't want to end up being the same as his friends, working as hard labor on the construction site. One of his friends, Scunny, told him that nothing was wrong to work at the construction site. It was an honest job. Suddenly, while chatting with his friends, a man came and asked Ossie for a fight. As a boxer, he could easily defeat the man. Isi, who was in the restaurant, saw that and thought that if she got acquainted with someone like Ossie, a brutal delinquent, her parents would be ashamed and give her what she wanted. She then talked to Ossie and told him that what he did was cool. She then gave him her number. That night, Ossie wondered who was Isi and decided to stalk her on her social media. He was surprised to find out that the beautiful woman who gave her number to Ossie was a girl from a very rich family. His mother, who was there with him, suddenly had an idea for him to approach the girl and date her so that he would be able to get some money from her and fix their financial problem. At first, Ossie told her that he didn't want to do that, but suddenly, his mother took his phone and told Isi to meet at the restaurant the next day. The next day, Ossie arrived at the restaurant where Isi worked to meet her there. Before he entered the restaurant, his friend Scunny gave him advice about how to approach a girl. He told him that he had to compliment her. As his friend, Ossie believed in him, even though Scunny was just bluffing. Not long after, Ossie decided to enter the restaurant to meet Isi. There, Ossie felt inferior getting to know such a beautiful and rich girl like Isi. He was so nervous he started complimenting Isi to the point it became annoying for her. Suddenly, Isi's parents came and asked her about Ossie. Her parents mocked him and offended him. He also scolded Isi for becoming a waitress in a small restaurant. Fed up with Isi's father, Ossie, who was offended, finally stood up and left from there. Surprisingly, Isi decided to follow him to his car and said that she was also fed up with her parents. Finally, Ossie let her stay in his car and joined him to pick up his grandfather. They then went to meet Ossie's grandfather, who was just released from prison that day. Isi was shocked to find out how weird Ossie's grandfather was. Even though that day was his first day released, Ossie's grandfather cursed everyone he met that day. Fed up with his grandfather and Isi, who kept following him, Ossie told her that the only reason he tried to approach her was to rip her off. He needed money to pay for his boxing career and his mother's debt. He hoped that by hearing that, Isi would stop following him. Hearing that, ISI asked him to meet again at the night. When they met, ISI bluntly offered him to be her boyfriend and would pay him in exchange for that. Aussie, who was currently in dire need of money, accepted the offer without any hesitation. The next day, ISI invited Aussie to meet her parents at a party. Aussie also brought Scunny with him. Without any hesitation, Aussie started acting like a delinquent and caused some trouble at that party.
Is there a problem with me, huh? Later.
The invitation, it was lovely.
When ISI's parents finally got home, they argued about what ISI had done. Her father didn't seem to care much about it and told his wife that what ISI did was normal since she was still young. ISI's mother, on the other side, told her husband that what their daughter did was unforgivable. ISI's mother once lived in poverty when she was a kid, and that made her act strictly so that ISI wouldn't end up like her before. The next day, Aussie invited ISI to pick up his grandfather at a club. When they arrived there, his grandfather caused more problems by accepting a rap battle there. Aussie was afraid that his grandfather would end up humiliated by everyone there, but surprisingly, his grandfather started rapping and amazed everyone there.
See, give him a beat, like Grandpa tried to escape. I don't know. This is Grandpa got bored and escaped from the home. Be Uncle Legend, cause that bitch, she still loves me. Wouldn't go that low. Well, fuck my own child.
ISI also praised OSI for having such an amazing grandfather. ISI also said that for the first time in her life, she felt alive. She never saw or experienced such a thing in her life before. At that time too, Aussie told ISI that he was in dire need of money, but unfortunately, ISI's bank account was frozen by her father and she couldn't give him the money right now. She then told him to do more things that could trigger her father's anger so he would give her what she wanted, including opening back her account and giving her some money. Because of that, they planned to make love in front of ISI's father. Some moments later, they did their crazy plan in ISI's house. When her father saw what they were doing, he immediately became angry. He scolded ISI for what she had done. He said that he never treated her to do such an inappropriate thing. He said that he was very disappointed with her. Hearing that, ISI decided to get out of the house and move to live with Aussie. Aussie was shocked to hear that because it was not scripted, but eventually, he played along with ISI and left there. When they arrived at Aussie's house, ISI met Aussie's mother. At that time, Aussie's mother didn't seem to like ISI because she never liked rich people and how they lived. Aussie, who knew that ISI liked to cook, then invited her to cook there. When ISI was cooking, she saw Aussie, who was chatting with his mother and grandfather. Looking at their harmonious life, ISI felt jealous because she never had that moment with her parents. Even though they lived in poverty, they still laughed together and lived happily. Moments later, ISI had finished cooking and served the food to the others. When they tried the food, they praised her because her cooking was delicious. Again, she felt jealous because she never had the warmth of a family in her life. The next day, Aussie invited ISI to practice boxing. From that time, their relationship got closer. When they were practicing, suddenly, Aussie's mother came and asked him to replace her to work in the gas station. ISI there asked if that was okay for him to stop his practice and replace his mother since he had to focus on his future. Aussie there told ISI that there was nothing he could do about it. He said that like it or not, he had to do the job because his family no longer had money. After Aussie finished his job at the gas station and returned home, his grandfather suddenly told him that someone offered him a sponsor for a rap record. Hearing that, Aussie was surprised. He never expected that to happen. His grandfather then invited him and ISI to celebrate it in the club. That night, they all spent their time partying and drinking all night.
See that girl over there? Now I'm gonna send her a pic.
What?
In the middle of the party, ISI told Aussie about his dream. She told him to be more focused on his dream and stopped working at the gas station. He had to be more focused on practicing boxing. Suddenly, because they were drunk, Aussie kissed ISI. It turned out that Aussie had a crush on ISI, but he knew that their relationship would never work out because of their difference, and what he could do was just kiss her. After that, they spent the night enjoying the party together. In fact, ISI also had a feeling for Aussie too. When they returned home, they both talked about a lot of things. ISI, who didn't get used to drinking, finally vomited. Aussie, who cared for her, immediately took care of her by cleaning her vomit. After they took a shower, they then slept together. In the morning, Aussie woke up ISI because her parents were there to meet her. She immediately met them. At that moment, her parents told her that they would do whatever she wanted and even paid for her study in New York on one condition: she had to break up with Aussie and resigned from her job at the restaurant. Hearing that, she was happy that finally, she would be able to study and become a chef, but at the same time, she was also sad because she would never be able to meet Aussie again. After that, ISI and Aussie had breakfast together. At that moment, ISI told Aussie about everything and gave him the money she promised. They were silent all the time, deep in thought. That time, Aussie hid his feeling by pretending to be strong. He never expected that their relationship would end up like that. He also wanted to break up the silence and confess to ISI, but he knew his place. He knew that he was nobody compared to her. From that day, Aussie got more and more messed up. He couldn't focus on his training because he kept thinking about his good memories with ISI. He couldn't sleep well because he kept remembering his time with her. Even though he wanted to tell the truth to ISI and confessed his feelings, once again, he understood that their relationship would never work. On the other hand, ISI, who was filling out her registration form for her study, couldn't keep her focus. She kept thinking about Aussie, and because of that, she decided to talk with her friend, Camilla. She confessed that despite everything that was far from all right for her, like Aussie's bedroom which didn't feel comfortable at all, or his mother who never liked her, or his grandfather who was a troublemaker, she still missed her time with Aussie, even though she understood that she would never be able to be with him. Camilla said that it was not love and she would forget about her feeling in no time. The next day, Aussie was still losing his focus while training. His coach then told him that his training shouldn't be interrupted by thoughts about women. He had to be focused on his training. Finally, Aussie decided to meet ISI at her house to settle everything. When they met, Aussie returned all her money and bluntly said that ISI was just a spoiled girl who couldn't find happiness. Hearing that made ISI irritated and they began arguing with each other. Aussie was forced to say those things so that ISI would hate him and he would be able to let her go. When ISI went inside, she realized that her parents overheard her conversation with Aussie. She was annoyed and yelled at her mother. She said that she was not fair for not letting her do what she wanted or love whom she loved. Her mother always decided what she had to do and what she shouldn't. She yelled and called her mother a liar. A few moments later, ISI had finally calmed. At that time, her mother approached her and apologized to her for what she had done to her all the time, for treating her unfairly and restricting her from doing what she wanted to do. He realized that happiness was not about wealth and money, but the freedom to choose to live life. And because of that, her mother gave ISI full control of whatever she wanted and let her choose what she wanted to do. Suddenly, Camilla informed ISI that someone had uploaded a video of her being drunk on the internet. She knew that it was Aussie who did that and decided to revenge on him. She contacted the boxing committee and offered some money to disqualify Aussie from the match. The next day, Aussie came to the restaurant where ISI worked. There, he asked ISI to contact the boxing committee to include him back so he could continue the match. But instead of doing what Aussie asked, ISI argued and offended Aussie more. Suddenly, Scunny informed him that his grandfather caused trouble with someone, and if he didn't stop him, his grandfather would end up in the prison. Since Aussie didn't have a car, he asked to borrow ISI's car to meet his grandfather. ISI then lent her car and came together to pick up his grandfather. Finally, Aussie and ISI met his grandfather. Fortunately, his grandfather hadn't caused any trouble yet. He then immediately stopped his grandfather and took him home. Before they went home, they stopped at a cafe. At that time, Aussie apologized for what he had done that caused trouble for ISI. He confessed that he did everything because he couldn't be honest with his feelings. He loved ISI, but he knew that she didn't deserve a man like him, someone who came from a poor family. He wanted to love her with all he had, but he couldn't forget that in the reality, money was above all. ISI hugged him and tried to kiss him, but Aussie stopped her. He knew she didn't deserve him. In the next scene, ISI was shown gathering with all her rich friends. At that moment, she felt different. Not like the others who looked happy, she felt empty inside. Camilla then said that ISI was different from the others. While everyone was happy with their condition, ISI never felt the same. At the other place, Aussie was told by his mother to replace her to work at the gas station. He refused to do that because he wanted to be serious and focused on pursuing his dream as a boxer. A few days later, Aussie finally attended his boxing match with Yanni Zukovic. Unexpectedly, ISI was there to watch his match. ISI then approached him and told him that she always loved him. She said that life is not about wealth or money, but being able to choose what she wanted, and she didn't want to regret not choosing to be with him. She also said that she decided not to go to New York to continue her study, but she decided to buy the restaurant where she worked and started her own business immediately. Besides, she said that she was sure that one day, Aussie would become a successful boxer, and because of that, She decided to choose him over what she had now. For the first time in her life, she was not sure about what would happen to her in the future. She was not sure about her dream, her future, or her relationship, but she decided to live her life to the fullest because life will always be filled with uncertainty, but there will always be hope to pursue one's dream.